all throughout my life. And the older I get and hopefully the wiser I get, the more I recognize and I hear voices like from the past, people that offered encouragement and, and where that led, like in my own voice, like to be honest with myself, like, yeah, I'm proud of you. I can say that, without feeling like I'm patting myself on the back.
Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. Hey Chaplain is the officer wellness podcast, which brings you expertise and wisdom from police officers around the world. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain are sharing their wisdom and experience so that you don't have to do everything the hard way. Please make it your goal today to share this podcast with one other person. That's how podcasts grow. Tell someone that you listen to Hey Chaplain, explain how and where on their phone to get it, and then send them a link to your favorite episode. And most important, tell them why you think Hey Chaplain makes a difference. Today, we are returning to our conversation about self-doubt and imposter syndrome with Tim Eggebraaten. In this part of the conversation, we're moving into areas of leadership and about how to encourage somebody. Tim was a police chief in Minnesota, and we'll discuss how not to reprimand an officer when you're in leadership and what role awards and award ceremonies play in how an officer may feel about him or herself. Here's Tim Eggebraaten.
That was one of the things that I did well, was that I truly cared about my people, and I wanted them to succeed, and I knew they could succeed because they were rock stars.
Do you think that the inability to believe that they were rock stars, the inability to trust themselves, the self-doubt, do you think that it hurt them more on a professional level or on a personal level?
Both, I'm sure. Because, looking back now again, I have no doubt that they were feeling the same things I felt. So, it affects us all personally and professionally. It affects us in our relationships with other people. One of the things that I talk about in my presentations is writing a letter to people, like a physical handwritten letter to people who have inspired you. And when you do that, when you think of somebody that has helped you, a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a boss, and then you sit down and you write that person a simple letter just saying, hey, I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you and you inspire me, and this is why. And when we do that, you're not focusing on yourself. When you focus on somebody else, it's releasing chemicals. And the studies that are being done are saying that it's as powerful as Prozac, on our well-being. And it's so simple.
Yeah, practicing gratitude and that kind of thing. It's like taking a pill. It really actually works that way. Yeah, totally.
And it's simple, but it's not easy for us to remember to do that. And but when you do that, the dividends are huge, not only on yourself, but the person you're sending the letter to.
I see officers that catch a lot of flack from the public. Maybe they have a bad relationship with the community and they go out on a call and they get yelled at and people think negatively and accuse them of everything.
Yeah.
And that negativity, they have to cope with it. So they embrace it. They're like, okay, I'm going to get treated badly. I'm going to get yelled at. And they smile and they're very professional, but they do kind of resign themselves to being treated badly. That's not the problem. The problem I see is when that starts to leak over into their personal lives.
Yeah.
They take that home that they just expect to be treated badly. They don't deserve to have good things. I feel like I have seen officers basically sabotage and torpedo their home life because they just assume they should always be treated badly all the time. And I wish I had a way to snap them out of that, and I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. That's part of the human condition, I think, and that us versus them mindset. When the officer, and it can be day shift versus night shift, where the day shift guys, they're just a bunch of loads that sit around playing on the computer, and that us versus them gets into the citizens, and everywhere.
But then you take that antagonism home
Yeah.
And you feel like, well, of course she hates me. Everyone hates me, you know, and they don't work on a marriage because they just assume it's their fate to be miserable and to be alone.
Yeah. And I don't know how many police officers I've walked up to. I've been retired for almost 9 years already. And you walk up to them and they've got their hands inside their vest, you know, and they're standing there. How you doing today, officer? Living the dream. And it's like, it's a prison sentence for a lot of people, and I get it, you know, that they don't know who I am. They have no clue, you know, I'm just another citizen. In my opinion, you are living the dream, because that was my dream forever. If I had the chance, if I could go back to being 25 years old and a new cop, I would jump on it. And I've had so many opportunities in my life that have been like 2x4s across the old kisser and saying, "Hey, idiot," you know, and here I am most of the time asking God, like, "Hey, give me a sign." And I envision God just like pulling his hair out, like, "Hey, idiot, what sign do you need?" You know, and I've given you so many signs. And I think we all have them if we can just be honest with ourselves and quiet our mind enough to recognize that the signs are there to be a better father, to be a better spouse or whatever, be a better cop, be a better leader, be a better person. The signs are all there. And if you just like acknowledge them and get over yourself and say, yeah, you know what? I've been given this blessing of a day, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I'm going to do something with it. And maybe Brother Jared will give me a call and say, "Hey, you want to chop it up a little bit and talk about our self-doubt?" And like, heck yeah.
I know that we cannot just tell a young officer to stop doubting himself.
Right.
I know it's not a switch that you can just flip, but I'm wondering if there is a way to create a culture that would grease the skids and help him move from self-doubt to a place where he's got that balance that we were talking about between arrogance and humility.
Yep.
I think what I want to see happen, whether it's small department, big department, anything in between, I'd like there to be this cycle that gets normalized where it's like, okay, I have identified a vulnerability. Here's a weakness I have. Here's a legitimate problem. I'm going to ask for help, and then I'm going to get stronger. And that is just normal. Needing to identify the vulnerability, to admit it, then to ask for help, and then to get stronger and to have time to get stronger, to recover. Just the same if I broke my leg, I'd be given a certain amount of time for that leg to mend. If that cycle could be normalized, then at least you wouldn't have the false narrative of I'm the only one who doesn't belong here. I'm the only one who has nothing to contribute.
But like, if you recognize that somebody did something good, regardless of your rank or stature in the department, let that person know, "Hey, good job." And
but that's so hard. That's so hard in law enforcement.
Oh, it's horrible.
Because even if you give somebody a little award, let's say you give them a coin or an award or a little certificate or something, you guarantee that the presentation of that certificate to that officer is going to cause everyone else on his shift to make fun of him.
Right.
That's not all bad. Some of that is good. That's building camaraderie, but it also increases that self-doubt. It's like, well, I didn't really deserve this, or this is stupid, or I don't know. I just, there's no easy way.
No, other than one-on-one.
Celebrate people.
Yeah, okay. I think one-on-one, though, that's where the key is. Because, we've all gone, well, this person got a life-saving award. City council was there. It's like, holy crap, I've done 10 times more than that. They never gave me an award. But like, after the call, you're one-on-one, you're door-to-door, and say, "Hey, good job last night. Just want to let you know that that was a tough call. You crushed it. Good job." And then that's it. Then you go on your way. But I guarantee you that from that sergeant or whoever it is, I guarantee you that's going to carry a lot of weight. And we all know too that some of the most powerful leaders within an agency they don't have rank. They're
they have clout.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the troops look to them, and then the administration looks to them. And when those people are on board with something, boy, they can steer a whole ship. And
yeah, but not like empty praise.
Not like, hey, good job breathing today, buddy. You're a really good breather. I mean, like the legitimate, like, yeah, that was a crappy call, and yeah, you crushed it. And then taking that further, like for the trauma, it took me a long time to start asking, yeah, that was a tough call. How are you? And then just shut up, because growing up in that culture was suck it up, buttercup, and well, of course it was tough. What'd you expect? To have those honest conversations like, hey, great job last night, or yeah, did you have to tell that person they were a maggot? And like you can do that same thing, not make a big deal out of it, but like also say, like a reprimand from a senior officer, regardless, with no rank or whatever, that carries a lot of weight too, where it's like a course correction that, hey, that's not how we do it here. You don't have the right to talk to people that way. And I wish people would have like jerked my collar a little bit harder as a young cop. And because I came into a culture not from here, and I came in with this thump and bump mindset, and that's not how they did it in this area. And so I was like a cowboy, and in the Wild West. And it wasn't until years later that some of the people that I respected said, yeah, you were a jerk. like, well, why didn't you tell me that? And I don't know how I would have responded, but it would have been a good start.
So you really value the one-on-one conversations from senior people and supervisors to speak into the life of the person, give them a word of encouragement, give them an occasional rebuke. Yeah. But see, I like the idea of the rebuke, because you think, well, isn't that going to make them doubt themselves more? No, not necessarily. Especially people who've been in team sports understand that the coach is going to come correct the player that he thinks can be corrected, that he thinks has potential to do more. And so to get some rebukes and correction, that means you're worth investing in.
Right.
So I like the idea of that one-on-one. Where does the public ceremony, the certificate, the award ceremony, where does that fit in?
I think that comes into like more of like where the profession's getting beaten up. So you're using an officer as an example, and to us as the internal, it's like, well, that's what we do. But to show the community and remind the community that we're not the boogeyman out here, but we also are doing this for a purpose. But yeah, well, this person did CPR, life-saving CPR. That's a big deal, especially to the person they saved, But then like other officers might be, well, yeah, I've done that like 5 times in my career or whatever. But it's, so I think that's when it's important.
We had an award given the other day in our department for an officer who, in just a flash, identified that the person pointing a gun at him was not actually pointing a gun. And instead of shooting him, he was able to handle that differently, because he identified, hey, that's not actually a weapon. It looked like a gun, but it wasn't. And so they gave him an award. And I thought, you know what? That's a great example of this is an award that the community needs to know about. Yeah. Okay. Now, the award was given in the squad room. And so everyone teased him for it, and like, you got an award for doing nothing, and I felt bad for how they were teasing him, but that's actually one. If I were the administration, I would elevate that and put that out at a city commissioner or county commissioner meeting, right? I'd have that be a public award, because it helps the relationship between the group and the community. Yeah. Where there's other awards that I think are probably better served to be like the one-on-one kind of things that you were talking about. Because anytime administration gives an award, you're not aware of all the different things officers do every day that are brave and important and stressful and critical and whatever. You don't know a fraction of those.
Right.
And so if you give somebody an award, if you give them a certificate or a coin, they probably had 10 other things they've done in their career that deserved it more than what you're giving it for. And so it's always going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
But if you can take the ones that would help us as a group with the community and make those public, and then take the others and have them be the one-on-one, hey, this mattered to us. Thank you. You did a good job. I see that you're good at this one area here, and I want to make sure you know it.
Like with the letter of commendation, even if you got a letter from the chief saying, you were in a pursuit the other day, you exercised judgment and you did all these things. So you get this letter from the chief, that feels good. But then when they post it on the bulletin board in the squad room, and then that's when the banterings, and so striking that balance of acknowledging a job well done and letting people know about it too. And that's an age old challenge of trying to strike that balance and not looking like back to that, hey, good job breathing today. You sure are a good breather. And by golly, and even like appearance, like uniform appearance and all of that. If you can say, you always look sharp, or clean your shirt, man. It's that your uniform looks filthy, and why is there Burger King wrappers in the squad car every night?
Let's flip the script a little bit here. Sometimes leaders are contributing to self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I have seen sergeants that are obtuse to this. They do not understand that they're making it worse.
Yeah.
And they will berate an officer in front of his peers over little petty embarrassing things. And I feel like, man, this should have been a private conversation.
Yeah.
Why is the chaplain and 10 other officers privy to this correction? This could have happened behind closed doors.
Yeah. And the worst one is that you send out a mass email to everybody saying, all right, people, reminder, you know who the officer was. So
I hate those. Oh,
it's
everybody knows who this is about, but you're blasting it out to everybody.
Yep.
And
I was the police chief, and this officer was notorious for just not, we'd call it not wiping after he pooped, and it was like he would do the job, but then there were no reports, there was no follow up, there was no this is where I'm at.
Getting that turned in, or
it was mandatory. He was horrible at it, and former Marine Corps guy, so you would expect
attention to detail.
And so through the history, when I was a sergeant, when I was first of all, when I was his partner, when I was a sergeant, and then when I was police chief, you did every avenue that I thought, okay, well, you talk to him one-on-one. Hey, the investigators have no clue what's going on. Why, so when I was police chief and I came into the office, and, we're a small department, 14 cops at that time. And you got this bloody car in the garage with, that there's no report, there's no impound sheet, there's nothing. And so the investigators are like, what's with that? And we're like, we don't know. So nobody knows what to do with it. We're looking through the reports, and there's a lot of work going into, well, what happened this weekend? And so what I did was we called it a Group 9 voicemail. And so the Group 9 voicemail went to everybody. And I did what you were just talking about. I berated this officer publicly on this voicemail. Horrible. But I was so frustrated because it was like, what else can I do? And it's
so was it a passive aggressive? Somebody left a car without a report, or did you say officer so and so?
I don't remember if I named him personally, but it was 14 cops total.
Everybody knew, and it was the same guy all the time. And and I'm not defending that was a horrible thing to do. I did not handle it well. Did you get any traction with that though?
No.
The voicemail didn't make him change.
No. But and he's a good man. That's the thing. He's a really good person. He's a friend. But it's like, okay, I don't know what else you want me to do. I mean, you help me here a little bit.
Another problem I see is that there are so many things to get wrong in the law enforcement job. I mean, you are tap dancing in a minefield.
Yeah.
There are you could be squared away in 10 different areas, but still make a mistake over here in the 11th area. And that's what you get called in and get yelled at for, and that kind of thing. From a leader's point of view, is there a way to, because you have to correct that stuff. You have to correct, everybody needs to be doing their job at maximum professionalism and competency. But is there a way for a leader to correct somebody who probably is doing a great job in other areas? But that's not what we're talking about today.
Right.
You came in, you made a mistake. You did this wrong. You did that. You didn't follow general orders or policy or whatever. How do you deliver that reprimand without destroying all the good work they're doing in all the other areas?
The main thing is that you're addressing the action, and it's the action. It's no different than pulling over a speeder. The person's not an idiot. They were speeding, and so you're addressing the action and not the person. You're not a bad cop, but you have to write a report, and you have to tell the
you have to communicate with everybody else.
Like, okay, what are we going to do with this bloody car? And what do you want us to do? Is there anybody arrested? Is there a dead body in the trunk, or what are we doing here? And that communication. So I think it's progressive. Like discipline is typically progressive, and same thing with all of it. You start out the verbal, like, hey, where is this? And then it progresses. But I think the main thing from every end of it is that you address the action and not the person. And then it doesn't stop when you're the police chief, because the union a lot of times will attack. They'll do the same thing. And it's like, I remember when I became a new police chief, I'd grown up in that agency. And so in my mind, I was still the same Tim Eggebraaten I always was. I just had a different office and a new white shirt. And then it became clear that throughout my whole career, there was always the idiot in the end office, the chief. And then I became the idiot in the end office. And it was like,
you were the enemy now.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden I had the union guys coming in and saying, what's the deal with this policy? You could screw us on this. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's me. When have I ever tried to screw you on if your mustache was a quarter inch, whatever? It's like you're pulling stuff out of your butt right now that makes no sense. Them doing that was no different than me sending out the Group 9 voicemail. Instead of them targeting a specific policy or something that whatever they felt I was doing wrong, it was an attack on my, like, how I felt about my guys, or where's my loyalty lie. And like, my loyalty lies with the citizens of my community and my department. Now I'm the boss. I have to think globally, and I love you guys. I would literally die for you guys. And you're coming in here and busting my chops on a policy that has been policy forever. And now you're afraid that I'm going to screw you on it. And so it goes all different ways. It's a human thing. If we remember that to address the specific issue and then not make it a personal attack.
That is really true. Now, would you please tell me again the copy machine story?
So I was sitting by the copier machine. I was a brand new police chief, and sitting there, the secretaries were there, and one of my officers that I highly respect was getting something from the copier, and he pulled the page and he said, "Excuse me, chief." And when he said, "Excuse me, chief," and he used that phrase, chief, I looked at him and I said, "That felt so good to hear you say that." He said, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "For you to refer me as chief instead of Tim, it it made me feel like we were talking earlier, like, well, maybe I do have a seat at the table. Maybe I've earned this seat at the table. But just hearing, and he was one of those silent leaders. He still is, not a ranking officer or anything, but people respect him. I love and respect the guy. And for him to say, excuse me, Chief, it validated, like, okay, that sounded really good. I get the same feeling now when my 2 grandsons say, Grandpa, or my 3 sons, adult sons, say, hey, Dad. I get that same feeling of hearing the title of Dad or Grandpa or Chief or Sarge.
It meant something coming from them.
It did. It meant a lot. He probably doesn't even remember saying it or anything like that. And when you hear, hey, good job, internalize it and recognize it.
And never doubt what a large impact a small word of kindness or encouragement can have. Yeah. I mean, you might just make a small little, hey, great job on that, or hey, you're really good at this.
Yeah.
But to the person hearing it, it might literally stick with them the rest of their life.
You just never know when you're doing something positive for somebody, or if you're doing something out of anger and spite, and you're saying something, how those negative effects can last a long time.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jared.
I want to thank Tim for coming in again. Every time he's on the show, I have people who connect with him and what he says, and they tell me they love hearing from Tim Eggebraaten, although they usually forget how to say his last name. On the next episode of Hey, Chaplain.
Very graphic scene. They were eventually able to get him out using the same method. They pulled him, out from under, and were carrying him around. Fire department personnel were there. They advised him to go ahead and put him on the ground, and one of the firefighters couldn't get to his wounds because he had his vest on. So I was able to assist with that to get the vest off, get it enough so they could start treating him. And then I ended up helping when they got Teresa out of that area as well, got her loaded up on a gurney. I was able to assist with that and get her loaded up in the ambulance, but pretty grave injuries by that time.
This show is a free wellness resource for everyone because of those supporters who are quietly helping behind the scenes. If you want to help this show reach more cops, chaplains, and other first responders around the world, please follow the link in the episode description to support the show. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guest and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain. And as always, pray for peace in our city.